So these first two examples right here, we are practicing again, setting up but not solving. Notice we always need to read the instructions, so set up but do not solve. So in this example, 8 pens and 7 markers cost $3.37, while 5 pens and 11 markers cost $3.10. Find the cost of each pen and marker. So remember, my variables are pens and markers. We're going to define them over here because that helps us see what our equations need to be. Now, if I have a P and an M, both of my equations need to include P's and M's in both equations. So that can be broken up into sentences. For example, this first sentence, 8 pens and 7 markers is $3.37. That would be the letter P and the letter M for a total amount of money. So I could get my two variables in that equation. And if I did that, then my second sentence, or the second part of the sentence, 5 pens and 11 markers cost $3.10. Well, again, I need a P and an M and a total. So with this one, I have P, M, and money, P, M, and money. So looking at this based on the setup, suggested method, well, if you notice, P's and M's are on the same side. We only know two ways to solve. We know graphing, where you have one letter that's completely by itself, or matrices, where we have our letters on the same side. So I, as the teacher, would suggest matrices because my variables are lined up together, or something like that, whatever you want to say, because P and M are on the same side for both equations, whatever. Example 2, the length of a rectangular field is 12 feet longer than it is wide. The perimeter is 76. Find the length. So here we have information about unknown lengths and widths. Notice our perimeter would not be one of our variables because they told us the perimeter is 76. We have vague information about length and width. So our first equation is going to be our perimeter equation. Now, we kind of talked about it yesterday, but remember with a rectangle, you have width, width, length, and length. So you have 2 lengths and 2 widths that equal your total perimeter of 76. Now, remember, once you use it, you can't use it again. So the only other information I have is the length is, which means equals 12 longer than the width. So length is 12 longer than width. Now for this one, you could kind of go either way. For example, this bottom equation, I could rearrange the W to the same side and use matrices, or I could solve the top one for L and do graphing. I personally stick to matrices if I can help it. So you could say matrices because the bottom needs movement, but once you do that, it would be quick. It would be easy to get it into matrices, something like that. Okay, and then these, again, we aren't necessarily solving. We're just setting them up. So Miss Biggs has 18 students in her Algebra 1 class. So the amount of students is not a variable because we know there's 18. There are 3 more boys than girls. Write a system that could be used to find B, the number of boys, and G, the number of girls. So here are our variables, the things we don't know. Boys and girls, that's how they are defined right there because it tells you how to set it up. So let's write something about these 18 students. Well, how do I know there's 18 students total? I took the boys and I took the girls and I added them together. So some amount of boys and some amount of girls, they are added together to equal my total. Remember, once you use it, you can't use it again. So what else do we know? There are 3 more boys than girls. So there are more boys and there are 3 more boys than girls. So the boys equal 3 more than the girls. Okay, and again, this one is not necessarily set up for either way. The top is set up for matrices. The bottom is set up for graphing. So you could solve the top one for B, and maybe you really like graphing, so you could just do the top one rearranged for graphing, or take the bottom one and rearrange for matrices. Again, some people like to say matrices because minimal movement, and it's easy. So at that point, if it's not set up for one specifically, then whatever you think is easier to do, whether you think it's graphing or matrices, then I would say go for that one. So you could say graphing because you prefer it. Last example, a store manager purchased a total of 21 coffee mugs and shirts. Each mug was $2.75, each shirt was $8.50. The store manager spent $132.50. How many coffee mugs were purchased? So they're asking us specifically about coffee mugs. So that's definitely going to be one of our variables. We see information about mugs and shirts. Mugs were this much, shirts were this much. So shirts are going to be our other variable. Now be careful when using S's as variables. You want to make sure it's a very obvious S and not a 5. If you think your S's look too much like 5s, then you might want to do some other letter. So I see things about money. So I'm going to put those together first. Coffee mugs are $2.75, so it's $2.75 per mug. And then shirts are $8.50. And there's my very obvious S, that's not a 5. And money plus money equals total money if you have total money. So I've used this one, and this one. Can't use them again. So I also know there were 21 mugs and shirts. So we had some amount of mugs, some amount of shirts, and it equaled a total of 21 items. This one, if you notice, your M's are lined up, your S's are lined up, equals your answers are lined up. So I would suggest matrices because they are lined up and ready to go. So make sure you're really reading the instructions on your assignment to see whether you need to be writing or